So we are so pleased to welcome here today. Todd, thank you so much for being here.
Well, you're welcome, and I'm glad to be here. It's exciting.
Todd, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your involvement in the real estate, as well as your involvement with NAR.
Sure. So I was actually born into real estate. My mom was a real estate agent when I was a kid. So I always used to joke that MLS books were my booster seats back in the day. And I got into mortgages right out of school during the first big refi boom in the 90s. Got into technology, mortgage technology at first, and then sort of got into social media after that. And that's when NAR hired me originally, is to help them with their social media strategy, which today is something that like an intern does. But at the time, it was a pretty big deal.
How long were you with them?
Over a decade. So I helped them build their social media strategy, and then I left and worked at Trulia for a little while. And then I came back and I helped them build their member data analytics department, where they were trying to understand more about their own members. And then for the last 4 years, I worked for one of their subsidiaries, which was called Second Century Ventures. And there I helped technology companies sort of navigate the real estate, especially the organized real estate industry. And now I do that independently.
As we talked about before, the media is filled, the news lines are filled with this National Association of Realtors lawsuit. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So, and of course, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to speak to the legal points of the case, but...
Wait, I'll stop you on that. This is one of those disclosure moments, everybody. Todd is not a realtor. He is not a lawyer. He has worked previously for the National Association of Realtors, and now we're going to hear from him.
Yeah, and I do think growing up in this industry, it gave me a lot of perspective on it even before it happened. And I think a lot of the people that weren't particularly proficient, not the best agents, really weren't doing a very good job of disclosing how they get paid. And that's really the agents that were buyer's agents mostly. They would kind of just gloss over it. In a typical transaction, the seller is paying the listing agent, and then the listing agent is offering part of that compensation to the buyer's agent. And so the buyer doesn't necessarily see that they're writing a check to the buyer's agent, but they are still paying for that buyer's agent.
It feels that way.
You probably won't answer this, but if I asked you who the worst real estate agent in all of Chicago is, but
zip it.
I almost guarantee someone popped into your head. And
Todd, we actually have a little black book that we keep in our office of people that we hope to not see on the other side of a transaction.
And so many agents are, especially good agents, are very good about explaining what they do and why their value proposition is what it is. And some of those agents weren't as good about it. So that kind of created a situation where people were not understanding what the commissions that they were paying really were.
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing you say is that it was very confusing. Because it was confusing, there was a lot of muddy waters. People weren't always sure that they were understanding where the commission structures were. And those that weren't able to articulate that as much created a scenario that created the lawsuit. So my understanding is that nothing is solidified as of yet, but there's a lot of discussions on what a settlement would look like.
Right. And the big thing from the settlement, and it's something that NAR was already trying to voluntarily get more agents to do, is that they're going to have to do a much better job of disclosing how they all get paid.
Sure.
And many agents already do that. In some parts of America, that's like having these disclosures filled out in writing is just been like local laws, normal practice. And now it kind of is across the nation. It's actually amazing to go around the country and see how differently real estate is practiced. For instance, Chicago listing agents do way more work than almost any other agent in the country, because they go to all the listings and they're far more active in it.
I didn't pay him to say that, anybody. Just so you know, you heard it here first. Chicago real estate agents on the listing side work really hard.
It's true.
No, it is. I'm going to back you on that one.
There was a second layer to it, and that was that within the MLS, which is the system where real estate agents show listings to each other, the MLSs would require that a field for compensation was listed, and that compensation could have been a penny, or it could have been 100% of the deal, or crazy. And the reason why they did that was to kind of add transparency to the real estate agents about what is being offered, but it wasn't really being then extended to the consumer all the time. And there were people that would manipulate that in certain ways. Like I remember when I was a loan officer back in the 90s, there were builders that were in the MLS that would offer like 11% commission to show their homes. And so they were trying to encourage these agents to show the houses that would pay them the most.
Overly incentivize them.
Right.
I'm with you on it. Are things going to change? Absolutely. But I think there's so much opportunity for it to be better and stronger. I've always tried to be incredibly transparent on these conversations with clients. It's going to help me just improve my game on that to be able to articulate the value. So I really see, and this is probably coming from somebody that's done this for 23 years, faced a lot of adversity in this. I think that there is a tremendous amount of opportunity in this for growth. And I think there's opportunity for the consumers to benefit out of it.
Yeah, I think overall it's a win for everyone that is either doing a good job or is a consumer that's trying to find someone that's doing a good job. Because I do feel like it will weed out some agents that just weren't very good about doing the little things that transparency matters. And
for certain. And I think one of the important things to note that people have tended to forget very quickly, the idea of buyer's agency was put into place out of the demand from the buyer. Buyers originally didn't have representation. It was a little bit more of that unregulated wild west they were taken advantage of. And the idea of the buyer's agent was to protect their interest and have somebody on their behalf. And finding that, now you can't expect somebody to work pro bono. So I think it's about figuring out that remembering that is a position that people wanted. All of my consumers right now, they don't want to navigate that aspect on their own, especially with what's going on out there. And I think that the media very cleverly is kind of navigating away from the idea of the actual representation and the fact that consumers want it.
Yeah. And, I bring it back to the media often will talk about how much an agent makes on a certain deal. And you get what you pay for.
It's so true in all aspects of life. This entire lawsuit seems to base a lot on the commission structure of it. And now the media is having a heyday with this. Per the media, commissions are going away. There's no more 6%. There's no more this. There's no more that. It's going to be the wild west. Do you really see a huge change in commission structures moving forward?
I think there might be a small change, but the reality is that those commission structures weren't dictated before. And there's a lot of real estate agents saying, oh, they've always been negotiable, but they weren't like bringing that up earlier, right? They weren't telling their own customer, hey, you want to negotiate on this? But there have been, discount brokerages is what I call them, but real estate brokerages. Are we
allowed to say that?
Well, I am not a realtor or a lawyer.
I don't think I'm supposed to.
And so there are brokerages that charge less, and that's part of their business model. And some of them have had limited success. Many of them pivoted to become more like regular brokerages. And so, I think a lot of consumers, I'm right now in the middle of selling my house. This is the most expensive thing that I own, and I'm selling it. And of course, I want a good person to represent me. And she's an agent that works, in my market. A difference of 1% is not as important as, does she know how to market this? Does she know all the people that are able to buy this house that are in that market? Does she know all the agents? Does she have a good relationship? Is she not in that black book that you're talking about, right? What really matters to a consumer is, how much was the total check? Percentage isn't actually the most important thing to focus on.
I think that's a really important part. And that's why, for me personally, as an agent that is invested in this, it's less about the commissions and more about the total numbers. Mm-hmm. And I think you're right. I think there's a big misconception on just how negotiable the payment of a buyer's agent commission is. As you said before, even to be in our multiple listing service, you had to offer, I thought it was $1. You're telling us now you think it might be a penny. Somewhere between 1 penny and $1. That's all that had to be offered out. Mm-hmm. obviously it has been something that maybe there weren't enough conversations on. That being said, as an agent, understanding how the dynamic of a transaction works also understands that with how these changes go into place, certain properties, if there isn't an offering of commission, could become more expensive to buyers, right? If a buyer has to pay their agent separately,
Sure.
then the cost of said property might become unobtainable or less attractive to another person. And that's why, as I've been having these conversations with my sellers, and I'm very, very fortunate that I get to work with a lot of very sophisticated people that understand, sometimes by offering more, we're going to widen our marketing pool and we're actually going to get higher numbers than if we didn't. So as you said, it's not as much about those actual commission dollars. It's about the structure to get to the highest sales price with the best terms.
Right. And if you're a buyer and you have $10,000 to put down and you're going to pay your agent $2,000, now you only have $8,000 to put down. So your buying power with your mortgage company has gone down more than that $2,000 because they no longer can afford that expensive of a home. So it will be interesting to see if the mortgage industry tries to finance buyer commissions as more specifically as a result of this. But in the end, I think that personally, we're selling our house right now, knowing everything about this that I already know. We're offering a commission to the buyer's agents because we know that that's going to be the best way to get the most out of the home. And the check that gets written to us at the end is really what's most important.